I was making a drive from Albuquerque to Houston about 4 years ago. It was one of those impulsive trips where I figured I'd just pull over whenever I got too tired to continue. Around midnight, my eyelids started feeling like they had weights attached to them, and I knew pushing forward would be dangerous. A weathered sign appeared advertising lodging at the upcoming exit, so I took it. The exit dumped me into this forgotten desert town that looked like it had been abandoned by progress itself. Maybe 6 or 7 structures total, and among them sat this decrepit motel with a neon sign that kept flickering on and off. The parking area was practically deserted, just a beat-up pickup and a sedan that appeared to have been sitting there for months, covered in dust. I pulled up near the office and walked inside. Behind the counter sat an older man, probably mid-60s, who barely glanced up from his magazine when I entered. I handed him cash for the night, and he gave me an actual metal key, not a key card. Looking back, that should have set off alarm bells. He mumbled that I was in room 12 and gestured vaguely toward the row of doors outside. I thanked him and headed out. The room was predictable. Stained carpet, a bedspread that looked like it survived the disco era, and a musty odor that hit me the second I cracked the door open. But exhaustion overruled disgust. I tossed my bag onto a chair, used the bathroom, and collapsed face first onto the bed. Sleep took me within seconds. I don't know what time it was when I jolted awake in complete darkness. Something had yanked me from sleep, though I couldn't identify what. Then I heard it. The doorknob was rotating slowly. I froze completely, watching as the knob twisted back and forth in the dim light, seeping through the curtains. Someone was absolutely trying to get inside. My heart hammered so violently I was certain whoever stood outside could hear it. The twisting paused briefly. Then I heard a new sound, scratching at the door. It sounded like someone was working a tool into the lock mechanism. I reached for my phone on the nightstand, then remembered with sinking dread that I had left it in my car. No way to call anyone. The scratching went on for what seemed like hours, but was probably only minutes. Then silence. Nothing. I remained motionless in the dark, barely breathing, straining to hear anything. After roughly 10 minutes of absolute quiet, I finally worked up the nerve to move. I crept to the window and pulled back just a corner of the curtain. The parking lot was dimly illuminated by that stuttering neon sign. Nobody stood outside my door that I could see. But then I noticed something that turned my blood to ice. There was now a third vehicle in the lot that hadn't been there when I arrived. It was parked directly in front of my room. I released the curtain and backed away from the window. I spent the remainder of that night planted in a chair by the door, wide awake, cataloging every sound. When sunlight finally broke around 6 a.m., I grabbed my belongings and bolted. As I was leaving, I noticed deep gouges around my door lock that definitely hadn't been there before. I also caught the old man from the front desk watching me from the office window with an expression I couldn't quite read but didn't like. I got in my car and didn't stop driving until I was 2 towns away. I travel constantly for my position in medical equipment sales. Over the years, I've stayed in hundreds of hotels, and most fade from memory immediately. But there's one stay that's permanently burned into my brain. I was in Detroit for a trade conference, booked into one of those mid-tier corporate chain hotels downtown. Nothing special, but nothing terrible either. Just one of those identical on every floor places. I was on the 9th floor in a room overlooking the street. The first night passed without incident. Conference all day, room service for dinner, early to bed. The second night, though, that's when everything went sideways. I'd stayed out later networking with colleagues and didn't return to my room until nearly midnight. I was getting ready for bed when the room phone started ringing. The clock showed just past midnight. I assumed it was a front desk, maybe a billing issue or a noise complaint from a neighboring room. I picked up and said hello. The voice on the other end was female and sounded panicked. She said I needed to leave my room immediately and come down to the lobby. I asked what was wrong, and she insisted there was an emergency in the building. She refused to provide details, just kept repeating that I needed to exit my room right away. I asked if there was a fire, and she said no. Just please come to the lobby now. Then she hung up before I could ask anything else. I stood there confused, but figured an emergency was an emergency. I put my shoes back on, grabbed my wallet and phone, and opened my door. The hallway looked completely normal. No alarms, no smoke, no other guests evacuating. I walked to the elevator and rode down to the lobby. When the doors opened, the lobby was silent and vacant. Nobody at the front desk. I walked over and rang the bell repeatedly, but nobody appeared. I called out several times with no response. I was standing there feeling increasingly irritated when the elevator chimed behind me. I turned expecting to see someone, but the elevator was empty. Then it chimed again, and again. All three elevators started ascending and descending, chiming each time they reached the lobby floor, but every single one was empty. I'd had enough. I took the stairs back up to the 9th floor, which took forever, and returned to my room. I locked the door and engaged the security latch. I tried to sleep, but I was too wired from the strangeness. About 30 minutes later, the phone rang again. I debated ignoring it, but curiosity won. Same woman's voice. She demanded to know why I hadn't stayed in the lobby. I told her I had gone down, but nobody was there. She insisted I hadn't come to the lobby. I argued that I absolutely had. Her voice changed, got deeper, angrier. She said I needed to come down again right now, or there would be consequences. I hung up on her, unplugged the phone from the wall completely, and tried to sleep. I just started drifting off when I heard a key card being swiped at my door. I sat bolt upright and watched as the handle turned and the door pushed open a few inches before catching on the security latch. A hand reached through the gap, fingers groping for the latch. I leaped out of bed and sprinted to the door, slamming it hard on the hand. Someone yelped and the hand jerked back. I shouted through the door that I was calling the police. I heard footsteps racing away down the hallway. I immediately called the front desk for my cell. A man answered, and I explained what just happened. He said he was the only one working and he hadn't left the desk all night. He also said there were no female employees on the overnight shift. He came up to my floor with security and we searched the entire hallway, but found nobody. I packed my things and checked out that night. I never learned who that woman on the phone was or who tried to enter my room. My boyfriend Owen and I visited California last summer for a week-long vacation. We wanted something peaceful near the ocean and discovered this hotel in a smaller beach community that wasn't overrun with tourists. About a 10-minute walk from the water, reasonably priced. We checked in on a Sunday afternoon and spent our first few days just enjoying the beach and exploring the town. Everything was perfect until Wednesday night. We'd gone to dinner and a movie and returned to the hotel around 10:30. Owen went to take a shower while I headed out to grab some ice for our drinks. The ice machine was on our floor at the end of the corridor near the stairwell. I grabbed the ice bucket and walked down there. When I reached the small alcove where the machine sat, I noticed a woman standing nearby looking at her phone. She glanced up at me and smiled. I smiled back. I started filling the bucket, and she just stood there. I figured she was waiting her turn, so I hurried, but when I finished and turned to leave, she didn't move toward the machine. She just followed me back down the hallway. I thought maybe her room was near ours, but when I stopped at our door, she stopped too, about 15 feet away. I went inside quickly and told Owen about the strange woman. He suggested maybe she was drunk or confused about which room was hers. We didn't think much more about it that night. The next morning we went for breakfast and spent the day at the beach as usual. That afternoon we were downtown browsing shops when I spotted the same woman from the previous night. She was standing outside on the sidewalk, staring through the window directly at me. I told Owen, and we both looked at her. She didn't look away or act embarrassed about being caught. She just kept staring. We left the bookstore and walked in the opposite direction. I kept looking back and saw her following us, maintaining about half a block's distance. Owen said we should try to lose her, so we took a series of random turns and ducked into a crowded restaurant. We sat there for over an hour, and I didn't see her again. We thought we'd successfully ditched her. We did more walking and shopping, and eventually headed back toward the hotel as dusk approached. We were only a block away when I saw her again, sitting on a bench near the hotel entrance. When she spotted us, she stood and started walking toward us. Owen told me to go inside while he dealt with her. I went into the lobby and watched through the glass doors. Owen approached her and they talked briefly. I could see him gesturing, clearly upset. The woman just stood there, barely reacting. After a few minutes, Owen came back inside and the woman walked away. He told me that when he confronted her, she claimed she wasn't following us, said it was just coincidence. He told her to leave us alone, and she just shrugged and left. We went up to our room and tried to forget about it. Around midnight, we were both in bed watching TV when I heard our door handle rattling. I looked over and saw the handle moving up and down like someone was trying to open it. Owen jumped up and looked through the peephole, but couldn't see anyone. He yanked the door open and looked out. The woman was standing about 10 feet away, just staring at him. Owen yelled at her, demanding to know what her problem was. She didn't say anything. He told her he was calling the police if she didn't leave. She still didn't speak, but she turned and walked toward the stairs. We called the front desk and reported what was happening. They said they'd send security. About 15 minutes later, someone knocked. It was security guard. He said they reviewed camera footage and found the woman. She wasn't a guest at the hotel, but had somehow gotten inside. They escorted her out and told her she wasn't allowed back. He apologized and said they'd monitor the cameras to ensure she didn't return. We were both pretty shaken but tried to get some sleep. Thankfully, we didn't see her again for the rest of the trip, but I was definitely on edge the entire time.